I'm with Tim Matsell of Contora. Hello, Tim.
Hi Ian, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for joining our little program. And just for the audience that we have here, could you just explain who you are and what you do?
Yes, certainly. So I'm one of the founders of a software platform called Contora. It's a statement of work-based platform, and we basically created it because of some of the issues and problems that we've seen with IT procurement and the process of delivering mainly IT projects within organisations that we've been involved in those kind of projects. So it was something that we developed to help some of the challenges that we've seen in our sort of careers within the industry.
Yeah, and so just for the uninitiated that haven't touched this industry too much, what actually is an SOW system, Tim? What are the building blocks of it?
So I would say the statement of work is effectively, let's talk about it in typically we've seen, a Word document. So the
Mm,
Word document has some description as what's being delivered. You have the risks in there. What are the risks of doing this? The assumptions that have been made to delivering of the work. You have the deliverables themselves. What exactly is it that we're delivering? Could be anything from installation of a brand new networking system within a new building. It
mm,
could be the development of a particular web portal software package. It could be some marketing work. It could be an organisation that delivers, marketing solutions, and it could be the
mm.
program that you would go through and the deliverables expected for that particular piece of work. So that's really what the statement of work is. I think the problem today is for many organisations, this concept of the contract or the statement of work is written in a Word document or a Google Doc, typically PDF'd,
Yeah, yeah,
electronically signed, and then stuck in a drawer.
yeah.
And that's one of the problems. You have this not very dynamic document. It's very static.
Mm. So, in your role as a contractor when you started this journey, what were the real consequences of a simplified kind of Word document type of approach? What was the pain to you that created?
Um, so I think the pain was firstly sometimes understanding the client's needs and putting that down. So that did take quite a while.
Mm.
You had the email exchanges. So typically, I would create a version one. We'd have a pre-meeting, try and understand what the client required. Version one of a statement of work. That was then typically emailed to them. They had a look at it, came back with things, and there was a bit of an email exchange,
Mm.
which for me as an individual contractor was manageable unless I had 3 or 4 clients all at the same time. And then that was a bit of a pain because you're always working with this, where are we? What's the latest version?
Mm.
If you then think about that on a much wider scale and a bigger project that has a number of contractors, so think of it from the client side, they have many of these statements of work to do, and managing that process without a tool,
Mm.
we have seen has been a bit of a nightmare with different flavours of statements of work depending on which area of the organisation you're in. The email exchange sort of getting lost and people working with the wrong versions of documents,
Mm.
the
Mm.
history of changes not being very easily understood, although they could be embedded in the Word document. Very hard to look at the last version and figure out what are we actually delivering.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it was just a burden in terms of that whole process.
And I've heard about statements of works now for a number of years, but if we go back to the sort of late 90s, I'd never heard of a statement of work, to be honest. I think at that time, Tim, most of the contracting I knew about in the IT industry was a kind of a master vendor or a major, IT company would come in and take on a whole project. That's changed, hasn't it? But why has it changed?
Um, that's a good question, and you're absolutely right. When I talked about creating kind of contracts and statements of work directly with clients. I did work for bigger organisations, in pharmaceuticals and high tech, and typically that involved going through an intermediary, a recruitment agency, if you like. And that tended to be time and material. So there wasn't a statement of work at all. It was just, as I think started the conversation with you, it was people saying, right, we need Tim for an amount of time because he's got this skill. So there was no sort of statement of work contract at all. And I think perhaps the way that it's going today is these sort of big agencies or big firms delivering services are not necessarily as reactive as the smaller organisations. It's a little bit similar to the government. They typically work with massive organisations, and they are trying the best to kind of work with SMEs because there's a lot of innovation with the smaller companies. And I think that's potentially why people are now looking to work with smaller organisations, but need that kind of discipline with a statement of work, because the statement of work can also indemnify a little bit the smaller suppliers. Because sometimes if you have a statement of work that's very ambiguous, you get a lot of scope creep and a lot of disappointment because the contractor or the smaller supplier believes they're delivering what was expected, but the client's not happy because they're not delivering what's expected.
Part of this is the kind of decoupling of the project management overhead of the projects, and the fact that obviously at one time the company that wanted the technology would do it all themselves. Then they kind of passed it on to the outsourcing for them to do it all. And it seems to be a democratization of that now, almost, where you're kind of saying both parties take some responsibility.
Yes, I totally agree. I think I think one of the terms is co-creation, and I think this is a really, really good way of both sides taking a little bit of ownership. I think there's innovation if you're working with let's say an IT supplier, and I'm a client working with an IT supplier. I think when both people, it's the same with everything here, and if the more people you kind of involve and the more different aspects and skill level and experience that you bring into a project from both sides, you are going to get a better deliverable. And I think if both sides really have good communication as what that outcome could be, I think there's a lot of more. The fit is better, the delivery is better, and the fit of whatever is delivered is better because simply you have more understanding. And I think that whole thing about the discussion helps facilitate a lot of trust between the organisation delivering the project and the client who's receiving that. So I think
Sorry, I was going to say, is this talent related as well? I suspect, because there's obviously a shortage of good IT talent, and I don't think any big IT consultancy can claim to own everything that they need. And I suspect with all the digital transformations that are happening, it's putting all your eggs in one basket, I suppose, Tim, isn't it? If you went to the full outsourcing approach that we used to do.
Absolutely, yes, it is, and I know. That was the safe thinking, wasn't it? That you go to the big company, and that's the way to do it. I'm safe. I've used one of the global IT delivery organisations, but some of my experience on those projects is at the start, when you're having the discussions, the senior players from those organisations come in and have a lot of credibility and a lot of skill, and rightly so that they've picked up over many years of delivering large projects. But then typically what I've seen, and this isn't just in one organisation but many, is then those senior people disappear and you kind of get what I would call, choosing carefully my words, some less experienced people on the project. So where you're thinking that you're paying the large sums for a high quality capability and delivery is somewhat different once the project starts. And I think the benefits of working with the smaller organisations is they have a lot of skill, But in the past, people have thought it's too much of a risk to go with those organisations. And I think that's changing now because people realise
Yeah.
much more flexible and can deliver quicker and much more reactive. So I think that's where it's going.
So I guess if you paralleled those two methods of delivering a project through going to one provider and them just managing the whole thing for you, and then a statement of work approach where you're democratizing the responsibilities and the duties and the outcomes, from your experience, would you be expecting the former to be more costly than the latter and higher risk? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think actually with the right kind of tool sets and the right approach, like through well-written statements of work, I think potentially the risk is lowered because depending on the complexity and the mix of things that need to be in the project, you can effectively be getting some of the top skills in the different areas to help deliver that entire project. And working with organisations that specialise in particular fields. So, for example, let's say you're creating a customer-facing portal for the military. Well, you're going to want some really good security experts in there to understand that. You're going to want some really good software developers in there. You're going to want some really good project people. I'm not saying that the large organisations can't deliver that. Clearly they can, but there's a risk and a price with that. I think with using a statement of work approach and very clear deliverables given to the right skilled resources, I think delivers much better outcomes.
I guess as well, you get to pick your own talent a bit, don't you? Because obviously, if you're going to a bigger supplier that's going to do the whole project for you, you're going to get what you get, I suppose, from them.
I totally agree, and that's absolutely right. You've effectively just pushed everything to that organisation, and you sort of get what you're given, so to speak.
Yeah,
I think with the smaller organisations, there is more of a dialogue. You do potentially actually meet the real people that are going to be delivering that project.
Yeah. And Tim, just so we can move on to the kind of the Contora story, what's different about Contora compared to? Because I think statements of work systems themselves have been out for a while. I think most VMS systems do some sort of statement of work module as such. What's the difference with Contora?
So I would say our solution is, so we've built it from the bottom up, and we've effectively created a dynamic statement of work where you create your requirements, deliverables, timescales, and costs, and they're all in this sort of digital format. Because it's online, because it's digital, that facilitates a lot of the co-creation conversations. The fact that you're not having email chases, you go to one platform and you can see the statement of work and you can build it between you. You can comment it, full history. It's everything can be seen. You can see exactly what's gone on with that. But also with ours, it's data driven. So you've got, typically with a paper statement of work, there's nothing literally you can do with that.
So in terms of what I was thinking about while you were saying that, Tim, is about contingencies, because at the end of the day, I don't know many IT projects at all that don't get derailed or delayed or become more complex, or the minimum viable product isn't actually good enough, and all those good things that go on. So is there any kind of contingency built into what you're doing with Contora?
So in terms of control and revisions, then we have that, and that's not rocket science. Even with a manual version, typically you have revisions. However, often some of those revisions, if they're minor project changes, they're never done because it's too much trouble to go in and revise something. Whereas with our system, it's much quicker. So we do revisions and changes in two ways, Ian. The way we can set our statement of work up is you can have some sort of flexibility. So you can have, for example, 10% flexibility in a deliverable in terms of the cost or the amount of time it's going to take. And that's agreed up front. So right up front, there's the budget, that's the flexibility you allow. which means that minor changes still have to be approved, but there isn't this massive going back to finance to effectively go and get some more money. So we have a little bit of a tolerance in there, and that's really good for small changes and keeping the process very quick.
Right.
Everything's recorded. You can see the change. You can see that somebody's consumed a bit extra, but it's been pre-authorized, if you like. The bigger changes. So, for example, I don't know, we're building this client portal that we've talked about earlier, and the client thinks, actually, that's not what we want. We need to have some extra functionality in there or do something. Well, that would probably be a revision change. But that is so easy in Contora. It's literally, you say new version and you agree whatever those changes are on the description of the change, any cost implications, which could be up or down. Once that's signed off, those controls are now in place. So anybody delivering has to deliver against that revised statement of work, which either allows them to have additional costs or actually restricts costs.
And Tim, you mentioned co-innovation earlier, and the co-creation buzz that's going around at the moment. To what extent is Contora supporting that, nurturing it? What's the relationship you've got in this area of co-creation?
So we have within the platform, we have different providers. So you can set up providers that you prefer to work with or new providers very, very quickly. Once that's done, that effectively gives you, if you're creating a contract and want to work with somebody, you can actually very quickly search for and select these providers. So you can build your own portfolio, if you like, of approved suppliers in particular areas. We've already spoken about the fact that this is everybody that's involved in the project, all of the stakeholders have approved access to the statement of work and the projects under that. So within our solution, we can have a project and many statements of work. So that manages a project very nicely with multiple statements of work. And very, very easy for everybody to be on the same page, just by looking into the portal. One of the other things
I was going to say, with co-innovation, co-creation as a topic area, I think one of the challenges is fear of intellectual property loss and data security. I think on your system you support the kind of master agreements, don't you? So can you federate those across a community of suppliers that kind of sign up to the same sorts of arrangements? Does it do that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a very good point. So we have two elements at that level. We have the master services agreement, which is the general framework of how you're going to work together, general terms and conditions like payments, etc. Security, IP can all reside within the MSA, the Master Service Agreement. But we also have substitute services agreements, which are very similar, but allows people using the system to subcontract very easily to another organisation where they themselves can't provide that detailed skill. So we spoke earlier about security. If you were an IT provider that had software development skills, had all the project management, had a really good track record of delivering projects, but there was a particular military security element that you needed, be very easy just to contract one part of the statement of work to that other provider. So it brings in the workflow supply chain, if you like. It's very easy and quick to do that.
So with regards, you and I are going to be meeting up again at a panel with US Tech next week, which is quite exciting. But just while I've got you on, with the Contora offer that you've got, if I give you your kind of moment in the sun with a chief information officer, what would you be saying to them to say, look, you've got to use this sort of system? What is it that's a compelling reason that they can't live without a system like this nowadays?
So I think it's a waste of people's time. That's the thing that we can tackle quite easily. I think. There's a number of things. There's the amount of time lost on low value tasks. I think with Contora, we can make the project manager focus on real project management issues rather than chasing bits of paper and figuring out how they're going to report to the next management meeting.
Right.
I think we can reduce risk because everybody is working on the same contract. And once that's signed, all the controls around that are in one place and are very clearly seen. Any revisions, comments, etc., all in one place. As you build up the suppliers that you're working with, you then have an ability to search and find suppliers that can match your particular requirements. I think the other thing that we've not really talked about is artificial intelligence. So we can get these contracts created very quickly. We're using an AI element to be able to help with the drafting process. And that means that people who are probably less experienced in contracts can build a draft contract very quickly, and we can look at what the client is trying to do, what is the objective of the project, and AI can go away and analyze some of the risks and put them in the contract, can bring in assumptions that are needed, and potentially in the future we can start to look at legislation. We're saying we are it's a co-pilot effectively. It's an ability to do things quicker and to reduce your risk and to start projects quicker in a much more collaborative environment. So I think the benefits are huge. It's saving time, reducing risk, and being able to see exactly what you're doing in much more real time.
And Tim, as we're coming up to the half hour now, just to finish off, what I didn't ask you is what size of business is this suited for?
So I would say it's suited for any business that has a contractual statement of work process.
Right.
I think if you're a small business running 4 or 5 projects, this is a massive help, particularly if there's only 1 or 2 people in that business, because it focuses the mind on a structured way of delivering for your client, and with the AI element also helps in drafting that contract really quickly. But the big wins are for the larger organisations who have to manage a multitude of statements of work. We did some analysis in terms of the exponential rising complexity with statements of work. And when you get into the 25, the 50, the 250 plus numbers of statements of work that you're actively managing, the interactions with a manual process in terms of sending email, invoices coming in, matching invoices to the statement of work is just huge. And with Contora, we can take a lot of those interactions away, and therefore, again, saving time, saving frustration, saving complexity.
Well, Tim, thanks very much for coming on the programme. Thanks for your time today. And I'll be seeing you next week, I think, on the US Tech event. So I look forward to seeing you there again as well. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you, Ian. It's always been a pleasure to talk to you. Bye for now.